All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode of the London is Blue podcast. As always, your host, Brandon. We got a Matt Law special. Matt, welcome to the holiday break that the Premier League promised you. Many days off.
Yeah, the big 3-day off break. Fantastic. What a time to be alive, hey?
Yeah, I tell you what.
I don't understand it, actually. I did say to Pochettino, you get... I think you get 10 days now before you play again, and then you have to play 3 games in 9 days. It's like, the scheduling is just crazy. Why bother with a break? Why not just have like those 3 games spread out over a normal amount of time?
Well, and then you had almost like 2 weeks off for cups in January as well. So I think some teams have had almost the entire month off, it feels like. Or match.
Some teams have barely done anything. And then you've got teams like West Ham, because they drew in the FA Cup and they've had other things going on. So I don't think they'll have really had a break at all. It's really weird. And then, like I say, a lot of teams who have had a break are then coming back and playing, 3 games in 9 days or something crazy like that. I don't get it. I think this is the last year of it happening anyway. I don't think it's happening again.
Well, I tell you what, Bleacher Report did put out a funny one of their animated videos, and it talked about all of these injuries that are happening. It's the top teams, Liverpool are starting to feel it now as well, especially with a couple players out for AFCON. But yeah, it's becoming a wider problem, you would imagine. So, but with the holiday theme on top, you said you've got a little insight into who's up to what. I just saw Chelsea posting as Enzo's birthday today as we record on Wednesday. So he's got a big old cake and hanging out.
Well, we're recording on Wednesday, and they're back today. They're back from their 3 days off. So it's Monday, Tuesday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I think a lot of them went to Dubai. I think half the Premier League were in Dubai. I think a few people might have had. I don't think Chelsea players necessarily, but I think a few Premier League stars had birthdays to celebrate, and I think there were a few birthday parties going on in Dubai, from what I understand. A lot of agents and people were flying out to Dubai and booking very swanky restaurants and things like that. So, Dubai was the place to be to spot a Premier League footballer. I think the Chelsea contingent, Pochettino and his staff basically went back to Spain. I think some of the other players actually went to Spain as well, who didn't go to Dubai. I think there were some others in Spain. I was most intrigued by Enzo, who posted an Instagram post from what looked like a ski resort. It was like it was idyllic. It looked lovely, but I'm guessing he wasn't skiing, because that would have seemed like a recipe for disaster. But he posted a picture of somewhere very snowy looking, very pretty.
Have we not learned anything from snow accidents in January? Enzo, stay healthy, my friend.
Look, I was surprised to see the snow in the picture. Let's put it that way. But like I say, I'm guessing he wasn't tobogganing or skiing or snowboarding or anything like that. But that was the one that intrigued me most. He seemed to do something a little bit left field for his 3 days away.
Well, good.
Even I think Cucurella, even recovering from surgery, I think Cucurella was over in Dubai or Spain or somewhere. I think everybody literally got away where they could this a few days.
Any excuse for a footballer to get away from London, especially after, like we just talked about, they played, especially Chelsea, how many matches in the last 7 weeks or whatever it is? I mean, it's been relentless. So good for them to disconnect and get a few days off. But we've started to have a little bit of transfer movement, which is wild because, again, we always laugh. Like, we booked an extra pod this month with you, Matt, because January, we saw what happened last January. We restructured the squad, built it up. But like you said, we were chasing Champions League and things like that. Not this season. And so it's been a lot more quiet. So my first question is strategy, right? Strategically, are they sitting back quietly because they like the pieces they have, or do they maybe not feel like there's enough value in the market?
Yeah, look, strategically, I'm much happier with what's going on so far this year, not just because it makes my life easier, but because you can see at the moment that they had a plan for the window and they're sticking to it. And as you say, that plan is not chasing things that aren't there. It's not chasing shadows and trying to throw money at shadows. It's tweaking the bits of the squad, mainly outgoing, that need tweaking. Matson's situation was a situation that needed solving. Datro Fofana's situation was one that needed solving. We might talk about that a bit more later. But they've done those bits. And then in terms of any income, it was always going to be the plan anyway. And I'm always worried to talk about the plan with Chelsea because I've talked about it so many times and the plan seems to have got thrown out the window transfer-wise a few times. But so far, they're sticking to the plan of just, if they do anything in the window, it'll be reactive. I always felt they'd want to see Chile get back. They've looked at left-back position, but they'll want to see how Chile looks. They'll want to see how things are panning out between Chile and Cole. We'll probably have talks about whether they want to stick with that till the end of the season or whether they want to be able to bring in a specialist left-back to maybe give Colwell more of a place within the centre of defence. And then the striker situation is the situation, do you go for a short-term stopgap type thing or a younger player, or do you wait till the summer to get the main target? And again, that's being slightly influenced by what's going on. And Nkunku's injury situation keeps fluctuating. 1 minute he's been out for a while, the next minute. This week it seems there's been a bit of good news and that it's settled down and they're hoping he'll train towards the back end of this week. That might, again, influence things. But yeah, they're being more reactive. And in terms of incoming, that totally makes sense. It probably makes for more boring transfer window content-wise. But yeah, I'm heartened by it so far, I would add. There's always there's still time for a big panic yet, though.
Well, yeah, we got to wait to see what fitness ends up at the end of the month. Maybe make a couple moves, see if we're not where we need to be. But you talked about Datro Fofana. Went to Burnley. Last time we talked, you were dead set on Seville. What changed?
Yeah, well, what changed was basically the loan. Chelsea used up their last loan place their overseas loan place by sending Ian Maatsen over to Borussia Dortmund. I still thought that there was a chance that they would try and create a space by moving people around a little bit. But having spoken to the people involved, literally, they really wanted to do the Sevilla move. I think that was the first choice of sort of the club to start with, and also Datro Fofana's people. But the pieces couldn't move into place. They could have tried to wait, but Sevilla were unwilling to wait. They want a forward in, and also it would have been a risk for the player then, and they needed to sort something out. So they pivoted pretty quick and got Burnley, which is interesting, actually. It's not one I'd have predicted at all, but I think it's quite a good shot to nothing, actually, because I look at it this way. I said to you in the last show that I've been pretty unimpressed with the Fofana signing up till now, and as we sit here today, I don't think Fofana's value is really anything. The people around him at Chelsea actually have done well to get him a Premier League loan. I wouldn't have expected a Premier League club to want to take him on loan with his record recently. They've done their job by getting him a really decent Premier League loan. Okay, they're fighting relegation, but I think he'll play. And like I say, if he scores 5, 6, 7 goals, all of a sudden it'll turn around for him a little bit. So it's up to him now, and it's really time he showed a little bit why these new Chelsea owners and people have put a fair bit of faith in him up to now.
Yeah, I mean, look, they've got Odegaard, who's kind of been their top striker. They've got Amdouni. Foster has come in a little bit. And then Obafemi, who's there. Jay Rodriguez still kicking around in the Premier League as well. So plenty of, I guess, competition for him in the squad. But I guess I'm surprised how quickly it all came together. Clearly, Burnley were happy to add him.
Yeah, and I'm told Vincent Kompany spoke to him, so Vincent Kompany seems to be on board. Whether Burnley loan 1 or 2 forwards out now, that's a possibility, but he'll get opportunities. None of those forwards are prolific enough that Datro Fofana's not going to get opportunities. He'll definitely get opportunities. It's just up to him to now take it. It's really down to him. If this loan doesn't go well, then like I say, value-wise, Chelsea would have lost nothing, but it will leave Datro Fofana in a tough spot. But that'd been the same if he'd have gone to Seville as well.
Right. I think that's where it kind of comes from, is like, at least he'll be in England. He'll be closer. And again, if he can get some minutes in the Premier League, for him, biggest stage in the world. Like, people will take Premier League subs and take bets on them. So up to him from there. But yeah, I think it was never going to be straightforward. Striker front, sticking there, right? Obviously, there's some like very loose rumors, I would say, coming from Saudi Arabia. A lot of players want to leave, right? Like Karim Benzema and some other strikers even. I think Jordan Henderson getting his contract absolved so he can leave. Seems like it's might be a little bit of an exodus out of the Saudi league. I don't know if Chelsea are interested. They're coming off big money. They're probably going to continue to keep big money. Doesn't seem like a good fit because also all the players that went don't fit this young, high ceiling player profile. But anything out of Saudi that might be of interest to Chelsea as far as opportunities?
Look, I don't think the profile particularly matters, because were Chelsea to suddenly go for an opportunity out of Saudi, it'd be a short-term thing, and it'd be very much as a stopgap. So I don't see the profile, because they're not going to sign someone permanently from Saudi. Look, I doubt whether they will do anything from Saudi for the reasons you just mentioned in terms of the money and the wages and all that. But what I would say is players like Benzema, players like Firmino, even someone like Mitrovic, there are people around those players offering them around to Premier League clubs and trying to get a market going. Now, it seems to have come out today that Firmino has given up on coming back, and he's decided he's probably going to stay over there. He was quite interesting because as you and I seem to mention every time I'm on this show, having covered Pochettino for a long time, I know he's a big fan of Firmino. I think he once named him in his top 3 or top 5 Premier League players ever. Big fan of his. It doesn't seem like he's leaving Saudi, though, but they have been offered around. It's something that hasn't, from my understanding, the idea of from somewhere like Saudi, if the right opportunity came about, it's not something that has been dismissed as yet, because I think we're just at a stage where Chelsea haven't really decided what they're going to do, and they're just looking at everything. But I think it's unlikely. The reason Jordan Henderson was able to go to Ajax is because basically he's walked away with nothing. You know, he's walked from Saudi pretty much with nothing in terms of the money he'll end up having to pay back on tax. His wages, we're told he's going to take a 75% wage cut to get back to Europe. Henderson's left with having made zero money pretty much. It will end up being in Saudi. So Jordan Henderson's situation is very different, I think, to where we are with the strikers who have been talked about maybe leaving Saudi. Karim Benzema seems to have fallen out with his club. I don't know whether he'd be prepared to give up the same amount of money or the percentage that Jordan has. So, but yeah, let's see. It's one that all Premier League clubs have sort of got in the back of their minds, because, like I say, there are agents offering these players on loan to clubs, albeit I'm not sure financially what they're talking about.
Well, what about Broja? So it sounds like there's interest from Wolves. It sounds like Chelsea might even be open to letting him leave permanently if again, suitable offer comes in. So we're playing that game a little bit. But what's going on with Broja? He's gotten a couple starts now. Obviously, Nico Jackson's at AFCON. He's gotten a goal recently, but I think sometimes you're kind of, I don't know, just hoping for a little bit more. You want to see the young guy bag some more goals.
Yeah, look, I think he's finding his comeback from injury tough. I don't think he's been the same player that we saw before the injury, who I thought was more dynamic than what I've seen of him recently. I think since the injury, he's lost a little bit of that dynamism, and that might be confidence or it might be a physical thing. It's understandable. Look, Broja, I don't think will go anywhere unless Chelsea do sign a forward. If they do sign a forward, I do in the club will certainly look at options for him, whether it be permanent or loan. Wolves are definitely in the market for a striker. They've looked at Danny Ings. They haven't got a lot of money. They've got, like most clubs, they've got financial fair play restrictions at the moment. So they're looking for probably a loan or someone they can buy and maybe pay for later or something like that. I think Crystal Palace might be looking for a similar profile of striker as well. There are a few looking for that profile of strikers. I don't think Broja would have a problem getting a club, but nothing will happen with him unless Chelsea line something up on an incoming front for sure. And look, I don't think he's doing terribly. I just don't see the same, like I said, I don't see the same dynamism from him so far. And I do start to wonder whether, even if it's a loan, whether he might be best for a bit of a change of scenery just for a while and try to sort of really get firing again before maybe coming back again at some point.
I mean, they've got him in content and stuff. The club seem to enjoy it. Maybe he's just open to doing it so the content team continues to go back to him.
I wouldn't worry about that. If you noticed last season, Mason Mount towards the end of the season was in all club content. He was doing all the sponsorship and the commercial and everything like that. Some of them are good at it. Some of them like it. Some of them don't. That's what it comes down to, not their futures, believe me.
Oh, yeah. No, that'd be too easy. So anyways, we're going to take our first ad break when we get back. Matt thinks that Chelsea might sign a bench player from Villa to fill our gap. So big teaser there. Think of the sponsors, and we'll be right back. That's right, Matt. You said, and I quote, Chelsea are as good to sign a bench player from Villa. Read the table. And it got a little contentious between us. I kid, obviously. But you said Chelsea might be interested in Jhon Duran from Villa.
Look, all I know on this is that it was put out there via someone on social media, and it just hasn't been denied. It hasn't been denied at all, which I always find interesting because Chelsea did very quickly deny Victor Gyökeres at Sporting Lisbon this week, and yet there's been no comment, no denial on. Let's say, I think the wording was discussions around Jhon Duran at Villa. I was flabbergasted when I saw it because I've seen a lot of him. And if you think Nicholas Jackson is raw, times it by 5 for Jhon Duran. I mean, he doesn't obviously start for Villa. He comes off the bench and he is incredibly raw. And his temperament is arguably even wilder than Nicholas Jackson's. I mean, Jhon Duran, even as a substitute, nearly gets sent off every time I see him. He goes around smashing into people. He does cause chaos. He's a bit like Jackson. He's not a similar player to Jackson, but he's similar to Jackson in that he causes chaos. He wins penalties. He creates situations just through causing madness, basically. He scored the odd goal. He scored a very good goal in Europe, very good goal against Crystal Palace this season, and one against Everton at home right at the start of the season. But he's no different to what Chelsea have already got in terms of raw strikers and players. It would be an astonishing thing for Chelsea to do, quite frankly. I don't think they'll do it. But as I say, the fact that it was reported that he's been discussed and that wasn't denied at all did just make me think that there must be something to that. Let's put it that way.
All right. 4 cautions in 185 minutes and all substitute appearances, which means he's getting cautioned every 46 minutes.
And he should have been. He came on in the draw with Sheffield United at home before Christmas when we were trying to salvage a win at that game, and he should have been sent off. He took a swing at someone. He should have definitely been sent off. He is mad. I think he's talented. There's a lot of talent there, but it's so raw and it's going to take so much coaching, and someone needs to get hold of his temperament. And this will probably remind you of a certain Chelsea striker who's at the African Cup of Nations at the moment. For that reason, it would just be an utterly astonishing thing for Chelsea to even contemplate doing. He's also been linked with AC Milan. I see that as being something like that. I see slightly being more sensible, going over to a league where he might just get into a bit of a rhythm, play a bit more, learn how to be a bit more of a first team professional. I get that. Something like Chelsea, I just don't get in a million years. I don't see it happening, but it blew my mind to see it, to be quite honest with you.
Fair enough. We will park that. Let's talk about left backs. We're in a bit of a tricky situation. You just said Ian Maatsen left to Dortmund, immediately started, by the way. So at least from hey, we're happy with this situation, seems like all parties are in a good spot. Cucurella is out for an undetermined amount of time post-surgery. Ben Chilwell just got his first minutes back. And then it is Levi Colwill, which is not a natural left back, we all know. What are kind of some, I guess, how are you reading the room on this? It seems to be kind of all of a sudden it's crept up on us and become a bit of a weak spot that we didn't have in preseason, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's a weak spot or whether it's just the injuries that have created this situation, but it is an odd situation. I think it's going to become a big situation for Pochettino in the second half of the season. If Chile can stay fit, I think this is quite an interesting situation playing out, because Pochettino obviously quite likes, within the defensive setup he has, of having the extra insurance of having Levi back then. I would say that recently Levi's shown signs of improving in that position and as you would expect, learning it a bit better. And I don't see that being completely ditched, like straight away. But with Chilwell fit, it will put pressure on Pochettino to play Chilwell at left back and actually accommodate a proper left back in his team. Now, the interesting other thing about this is, as we've discussed before, Chelsea are definitely looking at the market regarding left backs or players who can play at left back, even if they're, might not be a left back. And I think there's a decision to be made, and I'd imagine there'll be discussions around this of whether Pochettino would prefer to go through to the end of the season with Chilwell and Colville as his sort of left back options, which would suggest he will continue to play Colville a lot at left back, or whether they'd rather sign a more specialised left back to put Colville back in conversation for competing as a centre back a bit more. I think the club would prefer Colville to be competing more for a central defensive position, if I'm honest with you. I think that's where the club see him. And I think they see this whole left-back business as a bit of a stopgap. I'm not sure what I think about where Pochettino sees that, but I think that will start to become clear. But I do think it's a very, very interesting scenario. And with Chilwell being injured, there's not really been any pressure on Pochettino over that selection because it's just he's not really had any other sort of selection to go to, particularly after Cucurella had surgery. But now with Chilwell fit, as I say, I think there will be a little bit of pressure from fans, from players themselves, from just from the situation to actually play Chilwell at left back. And it was funny, it almost looked stubborn that when Chilwell came on against Fulham, he came on as a left winger. He finally gets back on the pitch. And you think, oh, great, Chilwell's back. They've got to recognise left back. And Pochettino put him on as a left winger. And I just saw that as a little bit of a sign of stubbornness on Pochettino's part. So I'll be really interested to see how that plays out. But I think they'll be talking around that situation a lot in the final sort of 2 weeks of the transfer window, because it will how both Pochettino and the club see it will determine very strongly whether they actually push the button on a left back, because as I say, they've definitely been looking at the market on left backs.
Alphonso Davies has been loosely connected. Not to talk about Tuchel, but it seems like he's having a lot of squad issues right now. Even De Ligt looking to potentially leave. But he's left back. He's 23. The thing is, his value is roughly £58 million. Again, for a left back, when I think, for all intents and purposes, the club, like Chilwell, is just a lack of health. My guess is this isn't the type of signing they're going for, even though, again, he's 23. Isn't it more of like, or maybe it is, and you correct me wrong, are they looking for essentially a left-footed Malo Gusto? Someone in the U21 French national team.
Yeah, look, if I was to take a guess, I would guess at the fact that they're looking more towards a Gusto profile than an Alphonso Davies profile. Alphonso Davies, I don't think his transfer fee would necessarily put them off, although it might do in January because of spending rules. They do have to be a bit careful. But I don't quite know what Alphonso Davies is on at Bayern Munich, but I would imagine Alphonso Davies would command a big old wage, and that part of it wouldn't really fit into Chelsea's profile. You'd then have Chilwell on £200,000 a week plus. You'd still have Cucurella earning probably around £100,000 a week. And then you'd have an Alphonso Davies on, I don't know, he's got to be 150 plus, I'd imagine. I can't see that at all from a wages perspective. So yeah, my thought on the left back is if they are going to get one in, and the profiles of people they're looking at are probably closer to your Malo Gustos, with the thought that then come the summer, either Cucurella or Chilwell will leave, and you will have then, one on quite a big wage and one on a much lower wage.
All right. Well, I will continue to be interested in just kind of seeing how that plays out. Dujuan Richards officially joined the club. Obviously, they signed him when I think he was around 16, so he's now able to join up, coming from Jamaica. Another kind of Kendry Paez, high profile youngster. Any ideas what's kind of in order for Dujuan Richards now that he's on the island, the colder island?
No, yeah. Not at the moment, no. I don't know. I'd have thought they'd want an adjustment period, and that he'd do quite well to hang around the club for 6 months, have a look at him adjust to England a little bit without too much pressure. But I don't know. I haven't checked on it. Isn't his nickname Whisper?
Is that? I believe so.
Yes, that's right. So, yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know what the plan is, but looking at it objectively, you would think that having just got him over, a little period of adjustment might be quite good for him.
Sounds good. Well, it's official. We got some moves and things like that, so we'll at least keep everyone on top of that. People, I sourced some questions. They still want to know about Alfie Gilchrist and don't know if you've got anything else to talk about since we touched on him last time.
I said last time...
I'm dubbing him the closer, by the way. If Alfie comes on, bosh in the clearances. Like, just put your foot through it. I love it.
Do you know what I think he's also really useful for as a late substitute? Is I noticed this against Fulham. So we were in that spell that Chelsea seem to always have now of having an almighty last 10-minute panic and everything go out the window and everybody lose their shit, basically. But also what happens within that is the fans obviously get very sort of nervous and, completely understandably, the atmosphere turns very, very nervy within the stadium when that happens, and you can understand why. But what Gilchrist does do coming on, apart from the fact is, like you say, he loves a tackle or he loves a clearance, is actually just bringing him on, lifts the crowd back up a little bit because the crowd have taken to him. They like him. He's an academy product. They like the fact of the way he throws himself around. And I noticed against Fulham, it gave the atmosphere a little lift just in the period where it was really, really hairy, let's face it. So I think he's actually useful for that too. I know that sounds really basic and stupid, but I actually think that plays a part in it. He does just lift the crowd a little bit at difficult times. I said last week there's been loan interest in him. I don't see him going on loan. I think he's very useful for them. I think it's very useful for him. I don't think it'll be a disaster for him either if he ends up, because of people coming back from injury, dropping back down for the rest of the season. I think next summer will be a big summer for him in terms of deciding where he needs to play and what the next stage of his development is. But I think, and Pochettino seems to have taken a liking to him. He probably likes his character. He sees a bit of himself, I'd imagine. And I think Pochettino himself was quite an uncompromising defender who liked to smash into people and stuff like that. So he's been a real little bright point over the last month. And I don't see them giving that up to just send him out on loan somewhere at the moment.
Yeah, I think we all love him. And think about, to your point, how many non-passes or misplaced passes, and it came right back down us. Alfie was putting his foot through it instead of trying to turn in tight spaces where we're just going to lose it. And he tweeted after the match, just bosh, and it was like him with those clearances. Like, I'm sure every time he smashed it, the crowd just lifted, right? Because at the end of the day, this is like dumb tactics of like me playing in college. But like, if the ball's in the air, Matt, they can't score. No one can get it. Like, kill the match off. What are we doing?
Yeah, exactly.
Love it. Love the energy from Alpha. We need more Alfies in our life. So we're going to take a last ad break. When we get back, we're going to talk a little bit about profit and sustainability and how Argyle is going to save Chelsea. So thank you to sponsors, and we'll be right back. All right. So Everton and Nottingham Forest getting whacked by the profit and sustainability, said they breached for the last season. And obviously Chelsea were in and amongst that, but we've been cleared, at least temporarily. Can you give us a little bit of context on this?
Yeah, I mean, clubs don't really get cleared as such. They just don't get charged and done over it. And it's all 3-year calculations. So you're allowed to lose £105 million over 3 years, basically. So over the past 3 years, Chelsea have been able to prove that they haven't lost more than £105 million. You don't get cleared because obviously then they redo the calculation the following year. And it's not to say that Chelsea won't find difficulties with it in the future. Sized their fees, as we've talked about so many times. They've brought a lot of money in. They've spent an awful lot of money, but they have brought a lot of money in. And they were in, when they took over, when the new owners took over, they were already in a very, very good position on PSR and financial fair play. So I never saw it being an issue for this one. They're going to have to be careful ahead of the next one. It's a massive issue though now. I mean, this is the PSR transfer window. It really is, because clubs are finding it really difficult. You know, Arsenal are finding it difficult, and they would love to sign a striker and a midfielder and a left back, and they might sign one of those. Nobody's going to sign Ivan Toney, it doesn't look like, because the clubs that he would want to go to and the clubs that might want him just can't do it in this PSR. It is the PSR window. It's why it's been a really stagnant transfer window at the moment. It will pick up. It will pick up, but clubs are having to be so much more thoughtful and careful. They can't just take wild gambles on players, because it will cost them so much against PSR. And so many clubs are sailing close to the wind. Like most clubs, I would say half the Premier League are sailing close to the wind on PSR. And it only takes one wild transfer window to then tip them over. My club, Aston Villa, have had to look what they did in the summer. You know, we talk about Chelsea selling their academy graduates. Villa sold academy graduates and put buyback clauses in them to get PSR gains. Lots of clubs are having to do that. Forest desperately tried to get off the hook by selling Brennan Johnson to Tottenham to help their PSR, and yet it ended up that happened too late to be counted within the PSR. And that's one of their defences, because they could have probably sold him to Brentford within and it would have got them through it. So it's a really interesting and a really big issue, and it's not going to go away. As I say, loads of clubs are sailing close to the wind of it, and clubs will have to do things that fans don't like or that fans find unpalatable. You know, we've seen Newcastle saying they might have to sell a star player or a homegrown player. Villa, if they don't get in the Champions League places come the end of the season, will have to sign a star player or a homegrown player. They'll probably have to decide whether they sell Douglas Luiz, Jacob Ramsey, for instance. Chelsea, not in the Champions League places come the end of the season. If they want to go out and get a big striker, they will have to bring some money in somewhere. They will have to either sell a player that will bring in big money, or they'll have to sell a homegrown player who will give them massive wiggle room on PSR.
All right. Well, I mean, that's definitely good context. One, this is a widespread thing, and it sounds like we're the Premier League, I guess FA Premier League. Who enforces this? Premier League?
Yes, Premier League. The clubs voted for it. I mean, the clubs. The funny thing is that now you see some clubs whinging about PSR and the calculations that are done. The clubs voted for it themselves, so the clubs voted for it. But because of the cycle they had to get to this point, it's only really now. It's really, and you know, Arsenal are involved, sailing close to win. West Ham are, Villa are, Wolves are. We've seen what Everton and Forest. That's 6 clubs. Chelsea are sailing close to the wind. Manchester City sold Cole Palmer to Chelsea for sure, with PSR in mind, for absolute guaranteed sure. You know, it's touching everybody.
Well, and that is one thing, I guess, that I wanted to touch on. You know, Wolves, Gary O'Neill came out and said that they sold like 15 players this summer. He's like, it was 100% for this PSR. Like, we didn't want to do that. He's like, we had to.
Yeah, of course.
So I think that it is good to know that this is like, it sounds like it's now being enforced. So it's like, hey, we're actually taking this serious. This is going to happen. The mid-season points deduction is tough. Like, obviously, Everton had their previous results, but Nottingham Forest, who've been grinding for half the season, now take a 10-point deduction. I mean, you've essentially ended their season in January.
Well, they haven't actually announced the, these clubs, Everton and Forest, now do have a chance to appeal and defend themselves, and they haven't actually announced what the punishments will be yet. It's likely to come more towards the end of the season. So Forest aren't 100% getting a 10-point deduction. We don't know that yet. But yeah, I mean, it puts them in an awkward place. They're not going to find anything out like I say, till either towards the end of the season or the end of the season itself. So Forest now know that to be sure of staying up, they will have to finish at least 10 points above the relegation zone in order to be confident of that. It's a very strange asterisk to have against a season, but this is where we are. And, we still do have a further asterisk against Manchester City with their 115 charges, and also against Chelsea over their self-reporting of what they said was financial sort of irregularities when they took over the club.
So that's the one I wanted to touch on. Is that still looming, or was that window now
Oh, yes.
passed with this announcement?
No, 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 no. That's completely different. That's not PSR related at all.
Okay.
That's financial irregularities that Chelsea self-reported financial irregularities pertaining to transfers that had been made under the previous regime, and also tax issues, and that's also being investigated by the Premier League. That's nothing to do with our absolutely nothing to do. So the fact that they weren't charged with this doesn't mean that that's been and gone and looked at. That's something that takes a lot longer, and will take as long as it takes. Whether they find out anything this season or whether that spills into next season, no one can really speculate.
All right. So awesome. Keep that rolling. So back to back to PSR. Would you feel like the loopholing that Bowley and company did with the 7-8 year contracts before that got kind of closed off recently? Do you think that is a big part of why Chelsea passed this PSR, I don't know, audit or whatever you want to call it right now?
It is an audit. It is an audit.
Okay. Was that strategy a big part of why we've successfully passed it?
It was certainly a part of it. It's certainly a part of it. I mean, there were three parts of it, I would say. One, the club from the year before Bowley and Clearlake took over were in a great PSR position. So that's one. Two, they've sold, and they haven't sold as much as they've been, but if they've sold probably more than any else in terms of the value of they've got back on players. And also within those sales, you've got to remember they've sold someone like Havertz for 60 odd million. Now on book value, I think he had around 20 million left on book value because of his contract. So it's selling him at 60 odd million. That gives you an extra 40 million to play with within your PSR accounting and everything. They've done a bit of that. They've sold a few players over book value. I think off the top of my head, Kovacic would have gone over book value as well. So they've wrestled money back on the PSR through selling players over their book value. And definitely the contracts have definitely played a part. I think it's too easy. And I think people who don't look at Chelsea too carefully would probably say, oh, well, they only got away with it because they did 8 year contracts. No, if they'd have only done 8 year contracts, they'd have failed it. They had to sell well. And whether you agree with all those is a different argument. In these they've got and selling over book value, they have sold well, and that has contributed massively as well.
Well, that's perfect. I mean, I think that is a good reminder. We did talk about the selling this summer, and even Mason Mount, right? He was 100% on that. The club did bring in a lot of revenue, and I do remember Kovacic. Now we talked about it as you mentioned. So, okay, we got to give credit then where credit's due from running the business side of it.
I think even the Maatsen deal is a good example of the fact. I do think they're not starting to because they did in the summer, but from summer onwards, I think they're actually doing quite well on the sales in terms of the business deals. Like I say, we can argue whether the club should sell Maatsen. We can argue whether the club should sell Mount. We can argue whether the club, if they sell Gallagher, should sell Gallagher. Separate argument. Purely in terms of getting the fees and over the book values, they are doing a good job. And Maatsen is a good example of it. You know, if you look back in the summer, they accepted a bid that would have been started off as a loan, but basically would have had an obligation in that would have guaranteed them £32 million. Maatsen has barely played from the summer to January, and yet his clause is set now at 35 million. Borussia have paid a 2 million loan fee. They're pretty confident that when they come to sell him in the summer, it will end up being for 35 million, therefore a 37 million fee in total. They've actually ended up getting 5 million better deal, or they think they're going to get a 5 million better deal, and he's not played any for. So again, that is good. That is good business and negotiating looking forwards.
All right. Well, I appreciate that update. I'm glad we dug into that too, because that's the broader picture, right? Outside of just the day-to-day. This is what protects the club's long-term ability to compete on the pitch And so, look, last thing here, I look, Matt, I know you know this. I didn't want to bring it up, but this is important to you. So we got to talk about the Argyle promotions from the match this past weekend. They were everywhere.
It didn't bother me. I didn't tweet about it. It didn't bother me.
I know.
I found it funny.
I'm poking a little bit. Funny.
Yeah,
I should clarify.
Some other journalists got very upset by it, and I didn't tweet about it because it didn't bother me. I found it funny, and I found it a bit bizarre. You know, watching a load of guys stand up and brush their teeth is a little bit weird.
The player entrance was all decked out.
Yeah, this is all old world meets new world, isn't it? And it is, and I get there's gonna be people out there who don't like it, and I get that, and I understand that, and I understand why. And I do think there is a debate to be had of whether in a live football match it is the place to do that kind of promotion. Fine, have the debate, absolutely fine. I don't really agree or disagree. It just doesn't. It's not something that really rattles me. The club have got. I'm sure there'd have been money involved in it for the club. Owners are going to use their football clubs to promote other businesses and other things. It's just the way of the world. And yeah, like I say, it didn't bother me. I got slightly worried when Pochettino came out after the match and said something had happened before the match that had put the players off, because I thought, oh my God, we're going to find out that something to do with Argyle has happened before the match that slightly affected preparations. But I'm told that is not the case. I'm told whatever Pochettino was referring to was not Argyle or owner related, should I say. Therefore, I don't really have a big opinion on it. If the Argyle thing had have affected preparations, then I'd have come down on it in a ton of bricks. But Pochettino wasn't aware of what was going on during the game. The players weren't aware. I felt sorry. There was one guy with his daughter sat directly behind them who had to keep standing up when they stood up. And I literally felt sorry. The extent of my emotion was I felt sorry for that guy and his daughter.
Yeah, that's fair. So yeah. we kind of talked about it too, is that, you know, this movie has a huge ad spend, and if Bully and the club can attract some of that money in, like, these are new revenue streams that they can generate on a match day without expanding the stadium. Hopefully it doesn't interfere with fans or the experience and things like that. Like, I know they put the poster up on the side of the hotel. We just have to kind of see, right, where this all kind of blends out. But if this is a new revenue stream that's going to lead to other things, and, like, you know, having Lee Parker wear the backpack on the match day and having like a movie promo as the players walk by, this is how they're trying to get creative to bring in more money, which again is profitability, sustainability, more revenues to invest in the playing squad and things like that. So we're just gonna have to see where it goes, but they tested it. Sounds like it's gonna run through the rest of the month potentially. It didn't seem, at least from someone abroad, like I didn't notice it really disrupting anything. I talked to Ollie Glanville in the stadium. He arrived right at kickoff. He didn't even know what was going on. He was oblivious as a match day, you know, supporter as well. So it definitely, I think, was bigger on social media, which is exactly what they wanted.
Well, this is it. The sort of beta call is exactly what they wanted, and is absolutely. I'd never heard of the film. I'd literally never heard of the film.
Same.
I didn't know anything about this film at all. So, and now I know that Dua Lipa's in it. I know that it's based on a book that's about sort of espionage and things like that. It's nothing to do with Plymouth Argyle. So, you know, it's done its job with me. I suddenly know a little bit about this. When the film comes out, you know, if it comes onto Amazon, I might watch it on Amazon. I can't see myself going to the cinema to watch it. But, you know, it's done its job. And let's face it, as you say, this, because of the way the promo's running, it might run again in terms of this Argyle one. They're not going to be doing this every week. You know, there's not going to be another film being promoted every single week. They've been in 18 months, and this is the first time they've done anything like this. And as you say, unless you were sitting very directly around it, I can't imagine anyone in the crowd would have had any inkling of what was going on at all, really. Which is why it doesn't, like I say, it's new world meets old world a little bit. And it just doesn't really bother me. Like I say, if in the fullness of time I find out that they've been in the dressing room or that something's happened and they've grabbed a player out of his warm-up to do something, changes the picture entirely. But if it's a sort of group of guys standing up pretending to brush their teeth, which just looks a bit funny, then whatever. And like I say, apart from the guy and his daughter, who I hope were fine, it doesn't really bother me. What bothers me more, actually, is stuff like the dugout club and things, but that's a separate discussion entirely.
I think you're
and
on
they were
record.
sat in the dugout club. They were sat in the dugout club, actually. So that dugout club was obviously shut for that game. I think the guys in the away dugout club had spent a cool £900 to sit behind Marco Silva, one of the most boring men alive. So that was money well spent for them.
Hey, Matt, that was their big day, all right? You just let them enjoy it. Oh, look, as long as it doesn't affect the players and on the match and on the pitch, you find a good balance in that. We'll see. And I thought they were in like those dugout seats anyways. I'm like, I don't think anyone's gonna be too upset. It's not like they were in the shed end or Matthew Harding and like creating a disruption of regular match going fans. So it seems to be done as best as it could have been, and it's them trying new things. By the way, I quote tweeted your Dua Lipa tweet. Pick or it didn't happen. Did you get the selfie?
I didn't get the selfie. I got to the game. I was told by people who work at Chelsea that Dua Lipa's here today. I've seen no evidence of Dua Lipa at the game. I don't know whether she was there or not. I've tried to ask people who I thought might have seen her. No one's really sure. So they've either kept it a very good secret or the people who told me were wrong. I don't know, quite frankly. Should have got, if I had, I would have 100% got a picture, because it would have been my kids' favorite thing ever if I'd have got a picture with Dua Lipa. My kids would have just lost it completely.
All of a sudden, all these football matches you've been going to finally paid off.
Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, we're gonna wrap there on that high note. Look, maybe John Cena will be at the next promotion. All right, he's on the roster too.
John Cena's been to a game already, hasn't he? He was in Bowley's box once.
I believe so.
But I think he's a Tottenham fan. I'm convinced I've seen him at Tottenham and been told he's a Tottenham fan before.
Yeah, who knows? He might be at the next NBC Fan Fest that we have over here, claiming to be another fan of something else. But look, you need representation. We don't have a lot of celebrity fans over here, so we'll see how that plays out. Anyways, Matt, thank you as always. Continue to subscribe. Check out his articles in the Telegraph. Great Twitter follow per usual. Link in the description. That's going to wrap us up, Chelsea fans. Until next time, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.